Homo erectus evolved and lived first in Africa. Homo erectus then moved out into Europe and into Asia. When Homo erectus moved out into Europe and Asia, it evolved into different species. One species were called the Neanderthals, the other the Denisovicians. They stayed in relatively small ranges. There was some mixing among the three groups, so that there was some mixing between the original Homo erectus and Neanderthals on the edges. There was mixing between the Neanderthals and a Denisovician on the edges, but by and large, these were three separate types of human species. You'll notice on the map, though, that they didn't make it over to the Americas. The Americas was a human-free zone. And so the first part we're going to look at is the pre-human Americas. Humans didn't make it to the Americas because Homo sapiens had not evolved yet. Homo sapiens were the ones that were the most exploratory and the most committed to wandering or running away from home. Homo sapiens evolved somewhere between 300 and 200,000 years before the present. The limit of Homo sapien range was Siberia by about 30,000 before the Common Era. So for well over 200,000 years, humans expanded across to Australia, up into Europe, up into Siberia, but they didn't make the leap across from Asia to the Americas until around 25,000 years ago. Well, what stopped them? What stopped them was the last glacial maximation. Between 25,000 years before the Common Era and 18,000 years before the Common Era, there were large ice sheets that covered the northern hemisphere. On this map, on the left, you see one that covered North America. There's one that covers Greenland, and another that covers Eurasia. That large ice sheet discouraged humans from migrating north. And so human migration, Homo sapien migration, stayed in the tropical belt around the equator. Very few humans were adventurous enough to move all the way north. We do know that humans made it into Siberia somewhere around 30,000 years ago. So they were there. They were living on the ice sheets, much like Native Americans in Alaska do today. So it's possible that they lived there. There's very little evidence, though, that Homo sapiens crossed into the Americas before 25,000 to 18,000 before the Common Era. Humans remained on the Eurasian continent. The last glacial maximation did create an opportunity, though, because the water that's in the oceans today was trapped in land ice. That meant that sea levels were much lower than they are today. And so land that is underwater today was exposed at the time of the last glacial maximation. On this Google map, you can see the ocean floor. And notice that the land areas in green are just slightly elevated above the light blue regions called the continental shelf. And then going across the islands on the northern Pacific, you can see that those islands, if water were just a little bit lower, would be sticking out over the top. Humans had routes from Europe to Asia, from Asia to the Americas in this small window. The big problem is when you get to the other side. Until about 18,000 years ago, there was a huge ice sheet covering North America. And so while Homo sapiens could get into Siberia and Homo sapiens could move out into that ice, they had no idea what was on the other side because there was a large glacier blocking the way. On the other side of this split, we know that there was a hole created in the glacier. That as the glacier melted across North America, it split and opened up a corridor for species to move from Europe to Asia, from Asia into the Americas. This corridor provided a path both for animal and human species to move from one set of continents to the other. This migration took place somewhere between 18,000 and 13,000 years ago. Fast forwarding to the present, after humans arrive, the ice is gone. On the map you can see that there are no permanent glaciers in North America anymore. That the glacier that had been there 25,000 years ago is completely melted. That meant that all of that water, instead of being trapped on land, went into the ocean, causing sea level rise. And so the humans had a very small window to migrate from Eurasia into the Americas. That window closed somewhere around 13,000 years ago. Once that window was closed, the Americas were isolated again. And so the last glacial maximation has both an opportunity and an obstacle. It's an opportunity because it locks up seawater in glaciers, lowering sea levels just enough that humans can be migrating across. As it melted, it provided opportunities for humans and animals to move from one set of continents to the other. But once that glacier melted completely, it provided a different obstacle. This time, not ice, but water. And so the humans that found themselves on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, became trapped or cut off from the rest of human development. And so there's your cultural break. That humans shared a wide set of behaviors up until 20,000 years ago. 20,000 years ago, some Homo sapiens made it across to the Americas, and they brought their Stone Age technology with them. But where Europe and Asia continue to develop new technologies, metallurgy, wheels, the peoples in the Americas did not learn those technologies from their neighbors. So humans as a species developed first in Africa, moved into Europe, and moved into Asia. They took advantage of an opportunity when the last glacial maximation started to melt. They got to the Americas, and then they got cut off.